Hello, everybody. This is your Chapter 5 test review video for college algebra. Example number 1 for the first test question is like this. X squared minus 14x minus 32. And we're supposed to factor it. I forgot the rest of the x, by the way. So first of all, we need to take the square off of the x and put the x in two spots because 1x times 1x makes x squared. Next, we bring down this sign. Next, we multiply that sign times that sign, and that makes a plus sign. And that result of that product of the signs goes into the second parentheses. Next, we make a double rainbow from the 1 at the beginning to the 32 at the end. We don't need to worry about the sign anymore because we already have the signs figured out. We need to break down 32 into a pair of numbers that adds up to negative 14. When we put it into these blank spaces, just like the Taylor Swift song about blank space. There we go, perfect. So I know that 32 is 1 times 32, and in some of the future problems I might skip some of these steps, but I just want to go through it slowly for this one, and then 2 and 16. And actually that's going to work because if I put the 16 in the negative spot and the 2 in the positive spot, that's going to add up to negative 14, so I know that those are correct. So I'm done, and I have figured out the answer. Now let's go to question number 2. This one says 5x to the 2 plus 20x minus 105. On this one, we have to do something that's the greatest. We have to factor out the greatest common factor, which is 5. And when we do that, we'll get x squared left over, 4x left over, and negative 21 left over. Then we bring down the 5 and we take the square off of the x squared so that we have x times x. And then this first sign comes down, and then we multiply the signs together and get a negative sign because positive times negative is negative. Then we multiply the 1 times the 2, and we get 2. And that breaks down into, oh, I forgot, no, that's not a 2, that's a 21. My fault. We take the 1 times the 21 and get 21, and then we break that down into 3 and 7. Because if we put the 7 in that blank space and the 3 in that blank space, positive 7 plus negative 3 adds up to positive 4. So that means that we have the right answer. Next, we're going to do number 3. This one says x to the 6 minus x to the 3 minus 6. And we have to break this apart into half of big as a power as a 6. So this power of 6 breaks down into x to the 3rd times x to the 3rd. And notice that the third power matches the middle, which is pretty much what happens when you have something that's in quadratic form. Bring down the first sign, which is negative, multiply the two negatives together, which makes a positive in the second box. Now multiply the 1 at the beginning times the 6 at the end, and you get 6. That breaks down into positive 3 times 2. If I put the positive 3 with the negative sign, and I put the 2 with the positive sign, that adds up to negative 1, which is in the middle of the original problem, and so that means that I know that it works. Perfect. Now let's clear the screen and go to problem 4. X to the 4th, that's kind of poetic. Minus 9x squared minus 36. Once again, I'm going to break apart the x to the 4th into half as big of a power, which is x to the 2nd, and then I bring down the first sign, then I multiply the signs together and get a plus, then I multiply the 1 at the beginning times the 36 at the end, and then I break that down into two numbers that somehow make 9, which I'm going to do 12 and 3. If I put a negative 12 and a positive 3, that adds up to negative 9, and so that means that I know that those are the correct factors. Let's do question 5. Question 5 says 6v squared plus 25v plus 25. So this one does not have a common factor in it. So that means I'm going to have to start by dropping the square off of the v, but I have to keep the 6 until the end because I don't know which part to cancel out from it. So I put 6v and 6v without the squared power into both parentheses, and then I bring down the first sign, and then I multiply the signs together and get a positive sign, and then I multiply the first number times the last number. 6 times 25 is kind of big. That's going to be 150. Now I have to break that apart into two numbers that add up to 25. So what about, let's just say 2 times 75, that's too small. How about 3 times 50? That's still not going to work. How about 4 does not go into it. How about 5? 5 would go into it 30 times. That would work. So it's going to be a 5 and a 30 because, oops, no, that does not work. Actually, that does not add up to equal 25. Just kidding. I'm not really just kidding. I just made a mistake because I wasn't concentrating hard enough. How about 6? 6 would go into it 10, 20, 25 times, but that still wouldn't work. How about 7, 8, 9, 90? No, that would not work. 10, 10 times 15. Wow, I should have thought of that a long time ago. 10 times 15 should work. So 10 times 15 is 150, and 10 plus 15 makes 25. Now, this is not the correct answer yet. We have to cancel out the extraneous factors, which is any number that divides into both sides of the factors. So we have to divide this one by 2 and this one by 3. And then once we do that, we'll get the correct answer, which is 3v plus 5 and 2v plus 5. So 3v plus 5 and 2v plus 5, and that is the correct answer. Next, let's do question 6. After I clear the screen. So it says 14a squared b plus 16ab minus 24b. We have to factor out a common factor first, which is 2, and the letter b. Then we'll be left with 7a squared plus 8a minus 12. Then at this point, we have to factor what's left. So we're going to drop the square, but keep the 7 and the a in both parentheses until the end. Bring down that first sign, multiply this sign times this sign, which is positive times negative, which is a negative. Multiply this number times this number. 7 times 12 would be 70 plus 14. That's 84. Break down 84 into something that adds up to 8. So how about, let's see, that's going to be tough. How about 2 times 42, or 3 times 28, or 4 times 21, or 5, 6. How about 6 times 10 plus 14? Nope. How about, well, actually, that might work. 6 and 14, that actually does work. So 6 times 10 is 60, plus 6 times 4 is 24. 60 plus 24 is 84. And if I put the 14 here, and if I put the 6 there, that subtracts to equal 8. Now I have to get rid of the extraneous factors, and I only have one of them now, which is the 7. So I'll get 2b and then a plus 2 times 7a minus 6. There we go. And that looks kind of like a b up there, so let me fix that. But the correct answer is 2b a plus 2 times 7a minus 6. Then question 7. It says 16x squared minus 49. Since there's only two terms, and since we can take the square root of both of them, we can use a square root factoring method, which is to take the square root of this and assume it's positive and x. So it makes 4x minus 7, and then the conjugate of that, which is 4x plus 7. That's pretty easy. Question 8. It says 7x to the third minus 63x. 7x to the third minus 63x. Once again, we're going to factor out a common factor of 7 and x. Then the 7's gone, and there's only 2 powers of x left. And then the 63 would leave you with a 9. And then those two things, both you can do the square root of a and b. So the square root of the x squared would make an x, Square root of 9 is 3, and then you do the conjugate of that, which is x plus 3. So now we're all done with number 8. Next, we're going to do number 9. And it says 16x squared minus 16y squared. Once again, there's two terms, and we can do the square root of each of them. So the square root of 16x squared is 4x. Then keep the sign, and then 4y would be the square root of that. Then we multiply by the conjugate of that. Oops, I just realized something, actually. I forgot an important step. You should factor out the common factor of 16 first. So take out the 16 first, and then you get just x squared minus y squared. Now, with the 16 on the outside, then you start doing the square root factoring method, which is take the square root of the x, keep the sign, take the square root of the y squared, get y, and then do the conjugate of that. So the correct answer is actually 16 on the outside, then x minus y, and then x plus y. Perfect. Now let's do number 10. So x squared plus 36y squared. So you could do the square root of both of them, but they have a plus sign between them. And there's nothing that can multiply, no real number that can multiply to equal 36 that adds up to 0. So this one is what they call prime. We don't have to factor it right now. So you can put in prime for the answer. Then we have number 11. 256 x to the fourth minus 81. So once again, we have two terms. We can do the square root of them both. So let's do that. So this is going to be 16 as the square root of that, x to the second. Keep the sign, and then 9. The conjugate of that is 16x squared plus 9. Now we can go further in the first parentheses, but the second parentheses is prime, so we cannot go further with that one. So take the square root method again and do 4x minus 3, and then 4x plus 3. But the positive parentheses cannot go any further. So those are the answers, is that. Perfect. Now let's clear the page and do number 12. So 12 says 4x to the 2 minus 4x plus 1. And this is a perfect square trinomial. So the way we do that one is we take the square root of the beginning, which is 2x, keep the sign from the middle, then we take the square root of the end, and the square root of 1 is 1, and then we put a square on the outside. So that's the answer. And then 13 says x squared minus 18x plus 81 minus y squared. So first of all, we're going to factor this part, which is a perfect square. So the method for factoring a perfect square is to take the square root of the first term, keep the sign from the middle, and then take the square root of the last term, and then put a square on the outside. Once we do that, we have that factored out as two groups. Now we're going to treat this as two terms. This is like A and this is like B. And we're going to use the square root method of factoring. So take the square root of the term A and you'll get x minus 9 by itself. Keep the sign from the middle and then take the square root of the last term. Now multiply by the conjugate of that, which would be x minus 9 plus y. Once we do that, then we have the answer. And then we have number 14. I'm going to clear the page for that one. 14, which says x to the 24 minus y to the 8. So once again, we have two terms, and we can take the square root of both of them by making the power be half as much. So let's do that. Half of 24 is 12. Keep the sign. Half of 8 is 4. Multiply by the conjugate to the 12th power, and then plus to the 4th power. We can keep going further with the negative sign because it's a difference of squares. So take the square root of x to the 12th, which is half as much, which is x to the 6th. And then half as much of the power of 4 is power of 2. And then the conjugate of that. And then everything at the end stays there. Now we can take this first one with the negative sign and do the square root method again. Half of 6 is 3. And then the square root of y squared is just y. And then the conjugate of that. But everything else in the equation that already has a plus sign cannot go any further because it's prime. So the answer is x to the third minus y times x to the third plus y times x to the 6th plus y squared times x to the 12th plus y to the 4th. And then let's go ahead and clear the page and do number 15. So 15 says 2x squared equals 7x plus 4. We're going to set that to 0 by putting negative 7x and negative 4 on the left side, because when you move a term to the opposite side, it changes signs. Then we're going to have to factor it out. So drop the square off the 2x squared and just leave 2x, 2x. Keep the first sign, which is negative, and negative times negative is a positive. So put a positive sign in the second term. And I have no idea why I wrote 2 instead of a parentheses. That's just a mistake. Now multiply the first number 2 times the last number 4 and get 8. Break that down until something adds up to 7, so maybe 1 and 8. If I put the 8 first and the 1 there, now you have a negative 8 and a positive 1, which adds up to negative 7, just like the original problem. Now we need to get rid of the extraneous factors, so divide this by 2. Presto. Then you get x minus 4 times 2x plus 1. And I forgot to equal 0 on the other side. So still equals 0. This is when you break it apart. You get one little equation equal to 0, and you get another little equation equal to 0. Each factor turns into its own equation equal to 0. That's called the zero factor principle. So x equals 4, and 2x equals negative 1. Divide by 2, and you get x equals negative 1 divided by 2. So x equals 4, and x equals negative 1/2. And by the way, in the computer, you just type those with a comma between them like that. You just have a comma between them. Do not put parentheses around them, though, when you put them into the computer, just a comma between them. And then number 16. Number 16 says 9x squared equals 4x. We're going to move the 4x to the left side, making it negative. Then we're going to factor out an x from the problem. You have 9x minus 4 left over. Then we're going to put the x in parentheses, and we're going to set each parentheses with an x into it equal to 0. If there happen to be any parentheses without x's in them, though, then you don't have to set those to 0. So x equals 0, and then I move the negative 4 over to become positive 4 divided by 9. You get 4 divided by 9. So the answer is 0 and 4 divided by 9. Then let's do number 17. X minus 3 times x plus 5 equals 9. Since this one is not equal to 0, we have to multiply together first. So x times x is x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Negative 3 times x is negative 3x. Negative 3 times 5 is negative 15. Equals to 9. And now you add those common terms together, the like terms together. 5x minus 3x is 2x. You get x squared plus 2x minus 15, and then move the 9 over, so you get minus 9 equals 0. Combine the minus 15 and the minus 9 together. Then you get negative 24. Now you factor it, so drop the square off the x and just leave you with an x. Keep the first sign, multiply the signs together. Positive times negative is a negative. And then now multiply the 1 at the beginning times the 24 at the end, you get 24. That breaks down into 6 times 4, which positive 6 and negative 4 will make it add up to positive 2, which is in the middle. Now you set each factor to 0. You probably already know this, but the answers that we get are going to be the opposites. Because when you move over the number 6, you get x equals negative 6. And when you move the negative 4 over, you get positive 4. So the answers are negative 6 and positive 4. And then last but not least, we have number 18. Wow, I feel like I've been working on this for 18 years. X to the third plus 8x squared minus 4x minus 32 equals 0. First, we're going to factor the first group by grouping it and taking out an x squared. Then we have 1x plus 8 left over. Then we're going to take out a negative 4, and we have a positive x and a positive 8 left over. Take out the common factor of x plus 8, and then we have x squared in parentheses minus 4 left over. Factor even further than that, though. The x squared minus 4 is a difference of squares, so we can factor with the square root method of factoring. You take the square root of the x squared, you get x, keep the sign from the middle, take the square root of 4, you get 2, multiply it by the conjugate of that, which is x plus 2. Now we've just learned in the problem before that the answers are going to be the opposites to the numbers that are with x if x is by itself in the parentheses. So x will equal -8, +2, and -2. And that's the final answer for the last question on the test review. Dear Heavenly Father, please help everyone to do their very best. Thank you for your love and your blessings, and help us to love you and do your will. Please help everyone to get a perfect score in Jesus' name, amen.